Josh here from Chicken Fox Productions, bringing in another episode of Memories of Us podcast. Today, Tony sits with Michael Mathieu, a whole body specialist, and this is his story.
I want to welcome everybody to another episode of Memories of Us. Today we got Michael. I almost called him Matthew, and that has been a thing going on with me lately. I've been mixing up people's names, but no, today we got Michael. He is a wonderful individual. He is a bodywork specialist, and he has an amazing story. And today I'm honored and privileged to have him on the show. But before we start, I want to give a shout out to The Color of Grief. And these people are doing amazing things over in Africa and so many other places. So go to the website, look at what they're doing, get signed up with some of their groups, and enjoy what they're giving back to the community. With that being said, Michael, how are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great. As I mentioned to you off air, today's my birthday.
Yes, happy birthday.
Good thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So I know we talked for a good little while, and I love your story, man. I really love your story. And I talked to Beth earlier, your partner, and she told me a lot about you, and so intrigued to have you on today because what the show is basically focused on is men in grief. And today we're going to talk about a different sort of grief when you grieve the loss of movement and how you can overcome that. Michael has an amazing story. And Michael, tell your story, brother. Tell your story.
Well, let's see. I'm trying to think of where I should start because I think there's some contextual things that might be helpful.
Right.
So I'm 50. I just turned 57 today. And unfortunately, I've had a bit of a rough road in my physical body. Always was underweight. Started having some beginnings of some stuff showing up in my late teen years. And then as I got into my early 20s and out of college, my health just fell apart and focused around digestive issues. And initially out of school, I got my bachelor's in electrical engineering, and I worked for Kodak when they were still a prominent company.
Right.
And but the writing was already on the wall, and that didn't feel like a good place to stay. And I started having low back troubles when I was like 23, and I had a doctor. I was just out of school. I got my doctor, with the insurance through Kodak and all that, and my back went out. And after playing volleyball, and I ended up at his office the next day, and he gave me painkillers and muscle relaxants. And I asked him if I could see a chiropractor because I needed a referral. Mm-hmm. And he thought they were a bunch of quacks and wouldn't give me it. So I ended up having to go on my own and pay out of pocket, which is fine. And this woman, it took her 4 sessions, but she got my back to shift, and within 5 seconds, I went from barely able to walk to feeling a heck of a lot better, and then started healing. But then that became a thing. Like pretty much every winter, my back would go out. Ooh. And here I'm like, 23 years old. It's like, and I was, not a serious athlete, but I played sports in high school and stuff in college, and I was a runner, and it just really took the wind out of my sails at that age to have that kind of a thing happen.
Right.
But that got me looking at other things. So it's one of those like awful things that happens to you in life that derails you into your path. And, or maybe derail isn't the best verb, but you know what I mean? Anyway,
I totally understand.
So, next thing you know, I went to some metaphysical bookstore in Rochester, New York, and got on their mailing list. And they sent me a postcard that said that 2 Rolfing practitioners, which is a type of hands-on structural body work, were giving a presentation. And I had read some little thing about Rolfing could be some wonderful body work. So I went and ended up doing the work. And before I'd even gotten, 3 sessions in, I kind of got that was my new path. And so it took a couple of years to put things together, but I ended up quitting my job and moving out to Colorado to do my Rolfing training in Boulder. And then after the training was done, I ended up moving to Fort Collins, Colorado, because there's way too many Rolfers here in Boulder. Anyway, so that was my path for getting into body work. And it took some time, but I ended up developing a really healthy, successful practice. And I can skip a lot of that. Eventually, my work got really informed by especially one French osteopath named Jean-Pierre Barral, and Frenchman, and one of his colleagues. I studied with them, and it didn't take very long until I really grasped the power of that work, because initially we start learning how to work on organs and their support fascias.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how can my liver affect my structure? And it for a lot of people initially, that idea doesn't make a lot of sense because it's all the soft stuff. But the big thing is it's the intelligency of the body. Okay. And those organs are at a high, there is a hierarchy in the body in my experience. And if you wrapped around a seatbelt, the diagonal strap of the seatbelt in a car accident, it goes right through the middle of the liver. And, a lot of people have digestive issues, and, sometimes their gallbladder isn't working so well. And, other things can be off in the digestion, and they, probably have mid-back pain and maybe a shoulder that's off too. And I started learning, it's, from these French guys, that you can actually, you can have big restrictions in the support fascias, the connective tissues, that, liver's a big organ, and a good sized man, it can weigh 7 pounds. And it's hanging from the underside of your diaphragm. Mm-hmm. And if all that ligaments that holds it in there, if those get too bound up, it's like you can't rotate properly. Your body might go into a side bend because it's trying to take strain off of that liver. Mm-hmm. And then you might end up with neck pain, because your whole structure's been compromised, and your body's, your spine's in a right side bend, and your neck has to go back the other way to try to correct. And so, so the work really got into finding what's primary.
Yeah.
And then a technique for listening to the body. So instead of me putting my agenda on, say, your body, if I was working on you, it's more, I tune into your body and I ask for your body to show me where it wants me to go. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. Some people just do it intuitively. I was a stuck in my head engineer, so I needed a technique initially to help me go there. Mm-hmm. And so initially I just kind of added that work into my Rolfing. It was another tool in my toolbox. But over time, as I started seeing how powerful the work was, at some point I more or less kind of let go of a lot of the soft tissue techniques I learned initially as a Rolfer, and moved into, I'm going to work on whatever this body shows me. And that could be an organ. It could be a joint. It could be a bone, because living bones are malleable and they can have strain in them depending on how the injury happens. It could be a blood vessel, vein or artery. It could be the cranium as a bony structure, but also everything that's inside the cranium, which means your brain, the dural tissues, some of the membranes, intracranial membranes, even the optic nerves coming from the eyeballs and where they go in the brain. So everything is now on the table. It's
Okay.
not just about muscles and bones and joints, because pretty much anything can cause anything in the body. And just to give people an example of what that means,
Yeah.
this is one of my favorite stories because it was so dramatic. A dad brought in his son who was 10. He was playing soccer and he was having a lot of ankle pain. And so we got him in. He came in his shorts, took his shoes off. I looked at his feet. He had absolutely no medial arch in his foot. So and actually he was collapsed into it. It wasn't just flat. All of his legs was collapsed into his medial arch.
Jeez.
And, it's one thing if something's tight in somebody and you can free it up.
Right.
But when something has no muscle tone, it's like you can't just put your hand in there and get your body to just change how it's using its muscles to get the tone back in.
Right.
So that's what's beautiful about this diagnostic we do. We call it listening. And so I stand behind somebody, I gently put my hand on their head. And with the intention, I put just a little tiny bit of downward force, just like 5 or 10 grams. And when you do that anywhere in the body where you just put a little bit of impulse into the tissues, the body will start talking. And then it's my job to listen. And I immediately, the draw on my hand, it's almost like there's some part in the body that will be a magnet for my hand.
Okay.
And people have different ways of experience that. Some people do it visually. Some people just feel it. Some people kind of know it. It's whatever it is, the way you do information.
Right.
Anyway, I got brought just a short ways right into his head. And then, so I got him on the table. I put my hands on his head. You think this head is so rigid and non-movable, but there are joints between the plates of the skull, which we call the sutures. Right. And with the right amount of force, you can actually move them very slightly. We're talking microns, but that's what's amazing about our hands. They can feel that little bit of change. And so we learned to do that. And so I checked various, sutures in his head and listened to his cranial motion, because the head in some ways is breathing cerebrospinal fluid. Mm-hmm. And it's like a bit of a water balloon in which the fluid is filling. And so things expand. Yeah. And then the fluid comes back out and it recedes. So there's this respiratory motion of the cranium. And that's what some osteopaths call it, the cranial respiration. Anyway, so I did some things in his head and things were not moving. And it's like, God, this kid's 10 years old. This is not how this should be. And I think I was so surprised in the moment. I said out loud, it's like, wow, his head is really stuck. And his dad was in the room with us and he's like, oh, you should have seen his birth. And I was like, well, tell me. And he's like, well, as soon as he crowned, this doctor saw his cranial skin was blue. So they knew he was getting suffocated and probably had cord wrap, but they needed to, so they needed to get him out of there as fast as possible. So they were going to lose him. So he said what they did with those forceps to pull him out was absolutely brutal. Oof. And, and you have this fragile little neck with no muscle tone in it. So you can you can put too much pressure both on the cranium itself and in the neck. Okay. And so I spent the whole session working on his head, a little bit on his neck and upper chest, and that was it. I did not touch his legs. And so, a little bit less than an hour's worth of work. He stands up. He has 80% of his arches back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those arches just popped up. So I could create some stories that my brain always likes to make up stories, and I let it do that because if I let my brain go into the story and it's something it's happy with, then it'll shut up and then my hands can work. But that's my engineering part. I'm always trying to figure out why. Right. And there's sometimes it's too complex. You don't know, but my best guess is he had so much strain from his birth in both his cranium and his neck that it loaded up or put strain in his entire spinal cord or
Chemical
spinal
press.
system.
Okay.
And I think what happened is there was so much strain in his spine that he didn't have the fluidity here in there he should have. I think his body let go of tone in the legs because it needed to create some fluidity somewhere.
Okay.
Or it could just be simply the neurology was messed up because of the strain in the neck and the head. So something in that realm. But as soon as we freed that up, and I noticed the big change in how his cranium was responding by the end of the session. His neurology started working right, and the tone in his legs came back in, and those arches just popped right up. And when I saw him a week later, he had no ankle pain.
Nice.
Very
nice. Very impressive.
Yeah, right. It's just figuring out how to talk to a body.
Right.
And a lot of my colleagues were really good right out of the chute, but being a stuck in my head engineer, I needed to like see things and feel things and but I wasn't very good at listening.
Right.
And so that, I was already getting pretty good at my work, but that was just this wonderful reinforcement of, listen to the body. And Jean-Pierre Barral, this French osteopath I studied with, when I've been in classes with him, he'll go over something he wants us to practice. We pair up with somebody, we practice, and then he'll walk around the room and he'll say, listen and follow, listen and follow, listen and follow. That's his message. And it's beautiful.
I like that.
So that gives people a little bit of context for how I look at bodies.
Okay.
And so it's finding the way in to support that body. And a lot of times it's not actually doing a lot, but if you can take the strain, if I can like physically, like say you have a lot of strain in the right side of your neck, if I take you into a right side bend to take the strain out, your body, that's assisting the body so that it's taking that strain out temporarily, and it can allow its self-corrective mechanisms to jump in. Okay. But if in a neutral position, the body's in a significant amount of strain, it doesn't have the capacity on its own to go into a self-corrective mode. So, because it's just trying to counterbalance what's going on.
Okay.
So sometimes in my work, I have to, really get into, whether it's with my hands or with their body position, we take the body out of that strain pattern. And then with my hands before my injury, and now with my intention or energy, if you will, then we work on, doing the right amount of manipulation with, and when I do my work long distance now, I might ask someone to side bend their head,
Right.
And then I do my work, even though it's long distance and I'm not touching them, it still helps me sometimes to get them out of that strain pattern.
Okay.
Because then things can work better. So hopefully, if you got some more questions, but I think that might be giving you at least a context for how I work and look at bodies.
Oh no, did you actually answer the question I was going to ask for you to get into what body work actually is? So I'm glad that you actually went into that. Now, for the audience out there listening, Michael has an amazing story, and how he does things. So one of the things that he didn't mention, and I want to put it out there because I think it's just an amazing, awesome thing. Michael is a quadriplegic. And his story, his passion for what he does is just amazing. I know if you guys can see in the background, he has the braces on and everything like that. I don't want to give away too much, but and you see the smile on his face. So anything is possible. You can
see my headrest for my wheelchair.
Exactly, and he's made leaps and bounds. So before I give away too much, Michael did suffer an injury, And I don't want to give too much away about that. And Michael was already leading into that. So I'll let him go ahead and continue the story.
Sure. Yeah, I'm deciding how much I want to have in there because it's there's some backstory that's powerful. And some of it's going to bring up my grief, which I'm okay with, but
Okay.
I may not be able to talk for a minute,
That's
depending
okay.
on how it lands today. So I think it's worth saying this, that Beth, my partner, has already been interviewed by you, and that's how you found out about me. Beth is a grief therapist, if you didn't see that interview.
Yeah.
And that's one of the really positive things that's come out of my injury is Beth was doing art therapy and play therapy with kids. And with my injury and how much it turned our lives upside down, Beth started exploring grief therapy. Well, she started doing grief work with herself, and then that became a path for her. So anyway, so go back before I was injured. Beth and I had been together a few years, and she had gotten clear on her own that she was really interested in having a child, and then put that to me. And I asked for some time, and at that point I was 48, and I pretty much was pretty clear in my head that wasn't a direction I wanted to go.
Yeah.
But our relationship felt so important that giving her just a head answer didn't feel like enough.
Right.
And so I really wanted to give her a clear heart answer. And so normally when I need an answer like that, I just sit with it for a while. I just kind of hold it, and eventually answers start percolating, but that didn't happen this time. So I reached out to a friend who would guide people on shamanic journeys.
Okay.
And I hooked up with her, and we did 2 journeys, and some really powerful stuff came up around my ancestry. I'm half German and half French, and my French side, Jean Mathieu left France because France had claimed Canada at that point. And in 1638, he walked from his small village to the coast at Bordeaux and got on a boat. And it was kind of like the land grab that happened in the Western US.
Yeah. Okay.
When they gave away, they're here, come squat on this land and turn it into a farm and it's yours. Well, they were doing something similar in Canada on the St. Lawrence Seaway in Quebec province. And so Jean got a little tract of land on the St. Lawrence Seaway back in 1638. And anyway, and we had done a family trip for my parents' 50th, where we took them to Germany to see my mom's family, which I had met and a number of times. And then we went to this little town called Montauk-Charente. And that's we could do another hour just on that story, but I'll just keep it simple because it's just this freaking amazing story of what happened. We weren't expecting. Anyway, so I connected in my journeys, I connected in with Jean, and then also my dad. And I just got it really clearly that, we're in such a different world now with technology and telephone calls and Zoom and all of that. We can, you could be in China and I could be talking to you right now, just like we are now,
Exactly.
even though you're just an hour away.
Yeah.
So
Amazing stuff.
Back then when he left, I don't know how long it took a letter to get there, probably months. And so anyway, I just thought about, boy, he left everything. And it's like, what came up in the journeys is the heartbreak. And and 11, 12 generations in my family line. And I started having awareness of how powerful that heartbreak was. And anyway, so in one of my journeys, I saw Jean and my dad and myself, and it's like we were having ceremony, and something came up around tears and blood and earth. And when I finished that second journey, my guide person suggested that I might consider doing some ceremony. So jump ahead a week or so, and this is August of 2012. I was riding my mountain bike in Lyons, Colorado, on the Antelope Trail just outside of town, and real close to the St. Vrain River.
Okay.
And anyway, I was out on my ride, and I got a drop of rain that hit my cheek as I was riding. And that just brought up the thought around the ceremony because of the three elements, tears and blood and earth. So I was like, oh, I could pull off the trail and do my little ceremony out here. Well, I did that, and I totally got lost on time. And when I finally got awareness, it was getting dark. And that's not a good thing to be out in the woods on a mountain bike trail in the dark. And so I realized I had to get out of there. So I wrapped things up. I got on my bike. No one else was on the trail. And I went through a kind of darker section in the trail, and I hit a ledge of rock without realizing it. I didn't see it. And it was high enough of a ledge so the bike just stopped. And I, without thinking, it just, when you lunge forward on your bike like that, it's easy to just grab the brakes.
Right.
And the whole bike just went ass over tea kettle. The rear end lifted up, and I froze, and I came straight down on my head on solid rock. And I had a helmet on, but because of my years of digestive issues, which I brought up earlier, my bones were not where they should have been at my age,
Right.
as a man, especially. And so I went into extreme flexion. I heard a whole bunch of noise, and then I was laying on the trail on my back. All I could move was my head. And to make a long story short, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was too far. It was probably like less than a mile from my car.
Wow.
But so that's how close this almost wasn't a story. But anyway, at one point, I knew I was in trouble, and I was probably in massive shock. But I pulled up all the energy I could into my body, and I did a psychic yell to Beth. And to cut to the chase, I didn't know this then, but what I found out sometime in the next, when I regained consciousness, is Beth heard me.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Take it.
Yeah, she said she was kind of wondering where I was. I had left her a message that I was biking in Lyons, and that was it. And she said she was in the kitchen, and then all of a sudden she felt incredibly sad, and she sat down. She sat down.
It'll be done over here in a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Normally my phone is off.
Oh, that's your phone. Okay.
Yeah, that's my phone. So I apologize for that. So
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just pick up where you left off, brother.
Yeah. No problem. So it was amazing when she told me. She said, this wave of sadness just went through me, and I had to sit down.
Wow.
And then, I'll make this short, but basically, she got right on making the calls and convinced them that 24 hours wasn't going to make sense to wait. And so she spoke with search and rescue, and the guy that she spoke to, God, I'm going to space his name. I'd like to say thank you by saying his name, and I'm spacing it right now. But anyway, he totally, excuse me, listened to her, and he got people out right away. And my last memory on the trail was, at first I was breathing fine, just, easily. But towards the end, I was aware I was having to mentally breathe myself. Wow. And I got to this place where I was like, wow, I'm probably going to die right here.
Wow.
And it's like, it was almost peaceful because, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was actually found myself a little angry because all the bird sounds and the insect sounds were just like they always are. And I don't know if I was expecting them to be quiet because I was dying, but that's one of my last memories being on the trail, was like, wow, I thought it was going to be different. Like somehow nature was going to do something special for Michael. But it was all just as it needed to be. And then the last thing I remember is I think I heard someone coming up the trail.
Okay.
And then my memory from there is like, 3 or 4 days later. So basically I broke from, there's 7 cervical vertebrae. I had breaks in C3 through C7, and the bodies of C4 and C5 were crushed, and I severed my spinal cord almost completely between C4 and C5. Jesus. So the ramifications of that are, I have very limited arm function, no fingers, no wrists. I can move my bicep. So thus I can lift my hand, but I have almost no triceps, so I can't push.
Okay.
And and sensation wise, I have almost full sensation in my chest until about an inch above my nipple, and that's a circle that goes around the back.
Okay.
And then down my arms, kind of shoulders are almost normal, and then I started losing a lot about halfway down the bicep.
Okay.
And so that's where my body's kind of at, and with all the drugs and anesthesias and the initial surgery hardware failed, so I had to get operated on again, and so major trauma. And then the first time I tried eating, about 3 or 4 days after my accident, I passed out and coke blued, and then they put me on a ventilator.
Wow.
And that also meant a stomach tube. And, with all my food sensitivities, they gave me like some of the worst things you could have. I hadn't eaten grain in like 10 years. And then it was a grain-based food slop they stuck in my gut. It was either that or a dairy-based, and I don't do dairy either. So it was kind of like,
right there with you.
Yeah. So I just got wrecked,
Oh.
So anyway, I don't know how much else to say about that, but it's been, I said to you when we talked the other day, the situation with my gut is such that Beth and I would joke, when you have this kind of injury, you got to joke about it because, life's already screwed up enough. It's like, if you don't make fun of it, then it's way too serious. So we would make jokes about things to try to, and it's also can be a good discharge if you laugh at something that sucks. So, we would say, oh, hell, we can live with quadriplegia. It's this other health stuff that's the problem. If it was just quadriplegia, if Michael was just stuck in a chair, but otherwise felt pretty good, that would be great. But so much of the time, has been misery because of, all the problems that got created. And then there's a whole bunch of other side issues for another time. But anyway, while I was still in the hospital, one of my buddies, Michael, that was currently in Seattle then, but he's somewhere else now. But he is somebody that also does the same body work I do.
Okay.
And our mentor is the same. And Jeffrey Birch, who's a practitioner in Eugene. Anyway, so we had become really good friends. He came to see me while I was still at Craig Hospital in Denver.
Okay.
And he was sitting in bed beside me. And I said, let me see if I can do my listening. And so I put my hand, I think I reached onto his chest or something. And I felt my hand get pulled towards his neck. And the reason that's so emotional is because I just figured with my injury, that was it for body work.
Right.
I was done. If I was going to do anything, it was going to have to be something different. But when I felt the listening, and it felt like it had always felt, there was this huge realization that the listening I was doing wasn't coming through my hand. So I have some ideas around that. I think what my hand is the focuser, but the information is coming in through my body field.
Okay.
And that's still there. You can call it aura, you can call it the body's electromagnetic field. I really don't care. And that immediately explained to me why some of my teachers told me, they could be sitting in a classroom and somebody walks into the room and their brain goes, there's a liver restriction. So they had figured out how to do it. I never had. I always thought it was coming through my hand.
Okay.
But that moment with my friend Michael, that just changed everything. And that opened the door again, that somehow I might figure out how to be a body worker again.
Okay.
Yeah. So then once I got out of the hospital, it took a lot of time, but I started practicing on friends. And, and of course now I'm totally limited because I'm in this big bulky chair, and say they're lying on a bed, I can only get so close beside them. Right. And unless their head is in my lap on a pillow, that's the only time I can get two hands on somebody. Otherwise, I've just got one hand. Well, then that adds to a problem because the way I did my work was always with two hands.
Right.
And I'd have hand on one point and hand on another. So that got me trying to figure out how to do it energetically or with an energetic hand. And then one of my teachers I brought up, this is like a year out of the hospital. I was like, do you ever work with energetic hands? And this is my infant cranial teacher, Carol, that lives in Portland, Oregon. And she said, oh, all the time. And she said, you can have as many as you want. You don't have to have just two. Yeah. And then she said, you can even ask that it be one of your teacher's hands, or you could even ask if it could be a dead person's hand that you want to be there. And that just was like, it was so obvious when she said it, but I was so stuck in the way I had done it before.
Yeah.
But that just opened up another door. It's like, oh, you can bring in extra hands. And so that got integrated really quickly. And then I kind of jumped ahead, and I'm going to kind of jump back. But one of my friends had gotten hit rear-ended by a big truck when we had the big flood in 2013. And,
Right.
it's one of the utility trucks that had come in from somewhere else to help out with all of that. Anyway, so she got rear-ended, her body was pretty messed up. And she is super, super sensitive to both touch and energetic work. So she was able to give me some really good feedback, and it was really fascinating. I was trying to get some work done, even with my just one hand, and just things weren't shifting. So I was like, okay, what's going on? And then I kind of tuned into her better than I had been, and something made me back up. Something in her body field. And I didn't feel like I got to the edge of it till I was about 15 feet away from her. And she felt it too.
Okay.
So there was something in her field that, it took me a while to kind of put this together, but there was something being held in her field from that trauma of getting rear-ended that wouldn't allow her physical body with me touching her to change. So I had to work in the field space and at that distance initially. And then I just met it. I didn't try to do anything but just, feel the edge of that space and around her. And then at some point it shifted and I was able to go like a foot or two closer.
Okay.
And we worked together negotiating that. And then after, 5 or 10 minutes of playing with it, I was able to touch her again. And then when I tried working on her physically, then things shifted. And so am I getting too detailed here?
No, you're fine, man.
Yeah.
I love the way that you're doing it because it explains a lot,
And
for those people out there that are really curious and don't have the understanding, body work is one of those things where you're in tune with the body. And Michael is one of those guys that if you're going through something, you want to reach out to this man and let him start getting you to heal the right way. So, I don't want to take too much more of his story. Michael, go ahead, finish, brother. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So that, I'm trying to share like the kind of peak moments where, either another door opened or it was a significant shift in kind of my understanding or just information for how I would approach things.
Okay.
So then we were able to get some stuff in a physical place to shift. And when she stood up, she was like, oh my God, because I forget how long it was post-injury for her. But, she had seen a chiropractor and was getting some other work, but she was still, her low back was whacked out and her head wasn't right and neck. And she had a significant change from that work. Okay. And that was when I knew it might not be easy, but I was on the way to relearning how to work again.
Okay.
And significantly, there were some new pieces coming in. And again, some body workers are just, they're just right out of the chute. They're like just aware of so much stuff. And I was really trapped in my engineering box of only what you see and what you feel is real.
Right.
And, this concrete. So that was a huge learning in that there's sometimes in the field things that have a massive effect. And, how that works, I don't know. Is it in the field? Is it in the body, but getting projected into the field? Or we could come up with a lot of different things, but that has persisted and it's still a significant part of a piece of my own work that I'm working on developing. And, with people who are rear-ended, what I'm not the greatest visually, but I kind of get a vague sense of things visually around people. Okay. And, I don't see like all kinds of colors and stuff, but I see shapes. And I've seen this now a bunch of times where people who have had an impact in a certain direction in their body, they often will have a big extension in their field. And I think it's like the body tried to protect itself. And then sometimes it didn't resolve or let go of that protection.
Now, I totally agree. One thing, what you were saying, and due to your situation and everything, it reminds me of when a person goes blind, right?
Yeah.
It's like the rest of your senses highlight. And in your case, you had this horrible accident, and now look at the work that you're doing, and it's like your body's become a magnet for it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, this conduit. You're the conduit, man, and I think that's amazing because it's another example of what's possible. Yeah, you've gone through all of this, but you've actually gained like a six or seven cents, depending on how you look at it, right? You pinpoint.
Or
Yeah.
sometimes Tony, the way I look at it is because I've wondered that. It's like, am I going to get some other sense? And I not to minimize what you're saying in any way, but in some ways, what it feels like, it's like, okay, Michael, you can either figure out how to work with what you got now,
Hmm.
or you're going to have to be a support person for some piece of software you don't care about.
Right.
So that's like major motivation
Oh man.
because when I've been doing this work for 20 years, it's like, dang, I don't want to let this go. It's like I'm so invested in it, and I was getting really good at it. So, I don't want to learn something I don't give a crap about. So anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, maybe there's been some enhanced perception abilities too. And so yeah.
Well, I think you are enhanced,
Yeah.
because the simple fact of, man, I don't know too many people that do body work, and to hear how you do it and considering, I think that's so amazing. And so, no, I think you are a superhuman individual. I think you're an amazing individual because I can't do something like that.
Yeah.
I pick up on people when they go through hurt.
Yeah.
And it's just that sensitive part of me I attract to the men and vice versa, especially when we got something in common,
Yeah.
especially that sort of hurt. And it's like with yourself, like you remind me of Daredevil, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you got your chair, you got everything, and you doing, you got your movement with your hand and everything, and it's like here's a modern day Daredevil helping people, same concept, and the work that you're doing, um, phenomenal, very very phenomenal. And I mean, I can't even say too much about it because I'm still learning about body work as I go. And there's my phone again. Excuse me one second.
No worries.
Uh, okay. Okay. So we ended that problem. So we'll pick right back up where we left off. I do apologize.
No
Yeah,
worries.
yeah, my phone goes off. I get calls all the time. Going out to meet families and stuff like that. I just forwarded it to my assistant for the most
Yep.
part. But now back to what we were saying. That, you're modern day Daredevil. Only difference is that you don't wear a fancy costume and you're not
Yeah.
blind. But the way that I see it, I can imagine it working is that you watching people and all of a sudden there's this attraction to it,
Yeah.
right? And your
Yeah.
body's just in tune to where it needs to go, from what I understand. And
Yeah.
to me, that's amazing because you're a human compass for the most part. When you think about
Yeah.
it, your body is, it directs you. And I find that very, very amazing because the healing that you provide and the comfort that you give people and things like that. You know, I guess I'm trying to formulate the question to ask you, and I'm really having a hard time doing it. But now, during this journey that you have embarked on, and for quite some time, what are some of the things that what are some of the challenges? I know COVID was a huge challenge for everyone, and for the most part, people adapted and went virtual. Now, what are some of the challenges that you have to go through in the work that you're doing now during COVID?
Sure. Let me just fill in one more piece of the story that's
Okay.
significant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I talked about with that one friend and perceiving things in the field,
Mm-hmm.
but her also having significant change.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of green light to go forward.
Okay.
And then, jump forward several years. And somehow I ended up in touch with an old friend from high school that I don't think I had talked to since graduation, and found out that her daughter was in a massive car accident and was in a really, really tough place. I think God, I forget the exact details now, but she had a severe traumatic brain injury and was, I think she was like partially blind, needed care, lots of care, and
Mm-hmm.
was in a bad place. And so I said, has she ever explored any type of craniosacral therapy or any direct work on the head? And I guess she had some, but it didn't sound like it made a lot of change. So I reached out to one of my Rolfing teachers, who's gotten into all kinds of other stuff since then. But anyway, his name's Paul Gordon, and he lives in Southern Maine. And I said, hey, have you ever worked in anybody at this level of trauma? And he goes, oh yeah. And do you think you could help? And he goes, possible. So he said, well, she lives in Portland. And he's like, well, I'm about 45-minute drive from Portland, or I can hook up with her over Zoom. And I was like, okay, I know some body workers who do like Reiki or other types of energetic work, um, do long distance work. And, I bow to them, and if they can do that, awesome. And it just never felt like it'd be something I do,
Right.
because, even though I was figuring out energetic, it was in person.
Right.
But the thought of going long distance was like, maybe if I'm lucky, I'll figure it out or whatever. Anyway, so I was like, well, so what do you do over Zoom? And he's like, well, 4 years ago, I got this really bad infection and I couldn't go to my office. And so I had already been studying some pretty energetic work, and I started playing with working over Zoom with people, and it worked. And I was like, damn. It was like, tell me more, man. It's like, what are you doing? So I he talked to me for like an hour at another time and gave me some ideas. And then I reached out to friends and colleagues and people who I thought could give me really good, clear feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And mixed results, but I had a couple people who I didn't realize until I did a session with them, that they had recently both been in car accidents. And in car accidents had always been my kind of specialty. I hooked up, back when I was able-bodied, I hooked up with a chiropractor in Fort Collins, and I was on staff with him for a long time.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so we actually we got good results with these two people. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess I can do this maybe. So that was another door that opened in terms
Mm-hmm.
of doing the work long distance. And so that was 3.5, well, it'll be 4 years, I think. Yeah, it's 4 years now. Okay. Since I started playing around with long distance work. And so that's kind of an answer to your question about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd had a few people come into the house and getting some work, but it's not the most professional. And then, that I'm developing that work, and it keeps getting better. And I've taken a class or two, and then I actually offered a class for body workers last February. Mm-hmm. We did a 5-week class on, taking your body work into more energetic long distance work. And I got reasonable. Actually, I was really proud of them. By the end of it, the 4 people in the class, they were doing really good work. Okay. What they were perceiving and what they were able to shift in such a short time, I was really impressed. So yeah, so I thought about offering another class, but I've kind of since July, I've been working with a marketing guy, and we came up with a logo, real simple. It's my name and cool font and tagline. Your guide to vibrant health, Michael Mathieu, your guide to vibrant health. And then it's been working on the website and he created a new website for me. Really happy with it. And actually it's probably going to get, I guess it's not going to happen today. So it's probably going to be Monday when I got a mailing list of like 500 people, and it's mostly from the website, one of those websites you can set up when someone's had an injury or sick or, whatever. So people can come in and find out what's going on and keep it up to date on progress and all that. And anyway, where was I going with that? Yeah. So this last 8 months has been focused on getting ready to kind of launch myself. And so that's been my kind of focus through this time. And, I have a few clients and I've also added health coaching to the mix because of all my struggles for most of my life with diet and nutrition and health. And, so I've learned a ton, and I've got quite a bit of information I'll offer people there. And then my own, self-experimentation has, it got me to do an experiment and try an all carnivore diet. And I've always been underweight. And my exercise I do right now is I have an electrode powered bicycle. It's kind of like I drive up to it. We strap my feet in. We put electrodes on my quads, hamstrings, and gluteals. And the computer on the bike does the right amount of stimulation and sequencing of how the muscles fire. So it's like it's taking over for the part of my brain that can't talk to my legs. And but it's all me doing the work. So it's all real work on my part. So I've got pretty decent looking legs, for a guy who doesn't do anything with them.
I think that's amazing. I think that's truly amazing because you're still finding ways of keeping yourself active. And it sounds like you're healing yourself. You're bringing back parts of your body.
Yeah, there's been some
working.
I'm still not out of the woods yet, but changing my diet has made some there's some people who go all carnivore, and I mean within a few months they're like their body's rocking in a way it never has before.
Right.
I think I have so much baggage from the past. It's being a slow journey. But immediately, over the first 4 months, I gained almost 1.5 inches of circumference around my thighs.
Okay.
And no change in how I was riding the bike. It's the same as always. But just all that extra protein and, getting through a digestive system that's struggled for years with assimilation.
Okay.
So that, and I'm also become aware of, and again, this is a whole nother hour, or a day, but there's, I found out that I've had pretty severe oxalate toxicity, which again, people's like, what's oxalate? It's like another time, or, and I'll be posting some stuff on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
That's some content I'm going to be working on, but anyway, so I'm healing from some big stuff. And, but the other thing, really positive thing is that since I changed my diet, my mood's been a lot better.
Okay.
And consistently, and I've put more energy into getting my business going again because I was able to. It's been a major struggle where I might have 3 or 4 days where I'm not worth a crap because I feel so horrible all the time. So things have really started shifting there, and and then also, it's really hard for quadriplegics to regulate their thermal regulation can be really off.
Okay.
So we tend to get cold really easily and overheated really easily, and a lot of us don't sweat, and I'm one of those. So imagine you're out in the 90s and you're not sweating. You know,
Ooh.
it's not good. So I got to carry spray bottles around with me. It's
Just to cool you down a little
yeah.
bit,
So
right?
what's cool though is there's been times in, this winter when my caregivers come to put me to bed. And usually anytime during the winter until it's pretty warm outside, my heater is on in the room and we got the door closed and everything. And there has been times back in January where I forgot I didn't even need them to put the heater on. And we keep the house pretty warm at 72. But
Right.
even though, I mean, in years past, all during the winter season, that heater's on. And there's been times I forgot to have them do it because I was warm enough.
Okay.
So, I'm on a good trajectory for healing. It seems like, we got to work some other details out, but
Right.
anyway, so that's kind of what I bring to the table. When I do health coaching with people is I'm not going to say everybody should be carnivore by any means, but it is an
Right.
awesome elimination diet. But we're seeing, I just did a class a couple months ago with a psychiatrist from the Boston area named Georgia Ede, EDE.
Okay.
And Georgia is a nutritional psychiatrist. If I'm clear, she doesn't prescribe meds anymore. And she is helping people heal, and
Okay.
primarily with ketogenic diet, because the brain just works so much better on ketones than it does on glucose.
This
And
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
powerful stuff. She's helping people with, the whole array of, psychiatric mental health issues,
Okay.
and they're getting better. And some of it's just, we're so crazy about carbs, people aren't getting enough nutrient density in their food.
Right.
And then the fat thing, you're a little bit younger than me, but similar. We're a decade apart or so anyway, but
Yeah.
you're old enough to have grown up with, how misinformed we have all been about saturated animal fats.
Oh yeah.
And now it's like, some of the people that I follow and learn from and study with, Georgia's one, it's like we're seeing huge healing with people going on more animal-based diets. And if vegetarian or vegan works for you, go for it.
Exactly.
But if you're not getting better or you're getting worse, I'm just seeing people's total health turn around. Anyway, that's a whole, we can get way off on that too. But
Yeah, no
anyway,
worries.
so
No
you
worries.
asked me about the COVID and
Uh-huh.
what I've been doing, and I'm getting myself, it's this past year is all about getting me set up to launch.
Okay. Okay. Now, what you mentioned the carnivore diets, because I'm a personal trainer myself, and
Yeah,
so
that's right.
just
Yep.
so that people understand that this is not medical advice, and these
Yes.
are just from my own experiences. And
Yep.
before you embark on any sort of diet or nutritional aspect, make sure that you're okay with your doctor first. These are Michael's personal experiences and what he's gone through. So again, before you embark on something like that, get go see your doctor first and be advised of what you can and cannot do and take that direction first. Now, I'm gonna say it outright. I believe the carnivore diet is an amazing regimen to follow. I tried the carnivore diet before and had tremendous results. I'm
Yep.
also a former bodybuilder, so I primarily watch what I eat anyway, and I'm a firm believer in keep it simple. As a matter of fact, that old saying, "Kiss, keep it simple, stupid." Right? So
Yep.
I'm a big firm believer in have your red meats because it's rich in hemoglobin, and people think about hemoglobin is blood. Yes, but the red meat is rich in amino acids that are good for your body. And when you add things in like clean proteins, like your poultry, like your turkey and chicken, and your fish and things like that, uh, hey, you can't go wrong. At least in my opinion, right? You can't go wrong with having some meat in your diet. I've tried the vegan diet, and I have nothing against veganism. I just like the animals that eat. the vegetables.
Yeah.
A little bit more than I do the vegetables, and there's nothing wrong with that, man. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Now, I know you're this year you're launching. Do you have a set date for when you're going to be out?
Well, the
You're gonna be up and
website
running?
is because today's Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had one little glitch in the initial. I've got this 520 people mailing list from the people who, paid attention to me when I was in the hospital. And a lot of them were friends and family, but then there are other people who just got interested. They found out about me from other people, and I haven't been the greatest at giving them updates and things. So that list, I'm not sure how viable that is.
Right.
But that's my toehold I got right now as a starting place.
Okay.
And so yeah, there was just a little glitch with the initial email going out to those folks, and it needed a little bit of editing. So, and the guy I work with is in the UK, so it'll probably go out maybe on Monday or Tuesday at this point. Doesn't matter. But yeah, and then the next piece of work is going to be me doing more active marketing.
Okay.
And so for me, part of my homework is creating more content on my social media platforms, especially like YouTube and Instagram. Those are the two I'm more inclined at the moment. I have a Facebook page, but anyway, yeah. So, but I really want to focus on my YouTube channel. And, right now I have 2 interviews. One is a previous health coaching client. And then this is funny. I was on this one forum that I'm on for learning about this thing called oxalates that, again, I'm not going to get into here, but I ran into my old swing dance teacher from 12 years ago. Okay. And she was on this forum around oxalates, and I did a little bit of body work on her back in the day, and it helped a little bit, but I got to hear the rest of the story. Is she has her own story how she got there, but her health was falling apart. And this naturopathic doctor she went to did a test, and they found out she had really high levels of oxalates in her urine. And so she went on a low oxalate diet. She found this forum, got a lot of help there. And the first 6 months were rough as this stuff was clearing out of her body, but then she's regaining her health totally. So I knew her, and I asked her if she'd let me interview her, and she said, yeah. And she's got a great story. This woman is, we make jokes about, it's like, that ain't rocket scientist, or that ain't rocket science. She is a rocket scientist.
Really?
And she works for JPL now, and I won't share her name, but on this show. But anyway, yeah, her cognition was off. She had joint pain. She felt miserable a lot of the time, and she's changed her diet and stopped eating these foods that are high in oxalates, which are plant foods, unfortunately. And it's one of those weird things of, I'll say just a little bit, but for some, plants can't run away from predators. So they've had millions of years to develop, interesting chemical defense mechanisms. And then some of it's just their own, plants need to store calcium. Mm-hmm. So they create calcium oxalate. And that's their way. If they need to liberate that calcium out of the oxalate molecule, they can. So, so for them, it's also a storage thing. But some of these little calcium oxalate crystals look like little microscopic toothpicks. So they're little spears. And some of the plants even have certain cells that contain those. They're like a bundle of, imagine like, you put your thumb and forefinger together and make a circle and stuff that full of a whole bundle of toothpicks, and then put it in a cell in a plant under pressure. So then when they bite into it, all these hundreds of spears go into their mouth, jabbing into cells. And yeah, it can cause real physical damage anyway. But there are things like this in plants. And you know, oxalates is one. There's lectins, there's goitrogens, there's phytates, there's tannins. You know, a lot of this stuff is just how plants work, or it's some of it's purposely for defense.
Hmm.
And we've kind of been brought up that everything about plants is fine and it's healthy, and plants want to give themselves to us and nourish us. And you know, some of these plant compounds are toxic, and some the body has to work really hard to break down,
Hmm.
and some the body can't break down on its own, and some can be broken down by bacteria in our guts, but some people didn't get inoculated with those, or they got wiped out with antibiotics.
Oh,
So some people are more vulnerable to certain plant compounds than others, and that's why, you know, as one example, the carnivore diet can be one of the best elimination diets you can do. And then, you know, if you notice, it's like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good on carnivore, but I think I want to really add some plant foods back in. You can do that, but you can do it one at a time and give yourself a week to
hmm.
see how your body really does. And, you know, I tried some elimination diets in the past, but it's like, you know, if you're allergic to 5 different things, you know, and maybe like these first 4 days, I'm not going to eat, you know, wheat and oats or, you know, foods with gluten, but my body's also reactive to, you know, sweet potatoes. And, you know, and I was like, you know, 4 day section, I'm eating grains, but then the other 4 day section, I'm eating another food. You know, it's just, I tried it for a while and I couldn't make sense of, you know, anything.
Yeah.
You know, some people can figure it out, but I never could. So,
Well, that
and
that really don't make sense to me when you fill your body with that many grains, because most grains you can't even digest anyway. And it's, I mean, for
well,
the most part, you got some good omegas that come in through your grains. Very rarely high significant amounts of protein, but for the most part, a lot of fiber.
yep. And
I,
that's
I,
debatable how important that is. There's some actual good research that shows people got better who are constipated without eating any fiber.
okay, see, that was my
And,
next
and this
question.
is this is real scientific research. This isn't just me
Right.
spouting off some
And
belief.
see, I read that before, and that was going to be my next question because being a personal trainer, I have to study those things, especially when you're dealing with clients that have sensitivities. And so I want to make sure that I give them the best suggestions, that I can give them.
Yep.
And and that was one of the things that when I do talk to people about changing up what they eat, I always tell people, eat the things that you like to eat. Just take away all the crap that you keep
Yep.
adding to it, right? Excess salt and pepper and sugar and things. You don't have to add those things in. And when I broke it down to my last client, I told her, I said, most of the things that you're adding to your food already is produced in your food. Only thing you are adding in is more chemical based products. And I think that's where, when we talk about the nutrition aspect of the carnivore and the vegan diets and things like that, I think you have to throw those into play um, when you're thinking about that, right? Because what you eat can affect your thyroid. It can affect every part of your body, right?
Yep.
Especially when you're trying to heal, and I think it's really important that we get that point across to people, is that watch what you eat. Not everything that you put in your body is going to work with your body.
Yep.
And I know there's actually a book, there's actually a couple of DVDs out, Eat Right for Your Body Type.
Yep.
Now, when we talk about that, where's your stance on that? Because I know what my stance is, and sometimes people body types can be misleading, especially when you got it written down on paper, because your body changes over time. Now,
Yeah. Um, oh boy, that's a big question. And you're not talking about the blood type, right?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the blood type, but your body type. Now, blood type
Yeah,
is a total different thing because then you have to break down the sugars. You got to break down the meats, the how much you put into your body to match your blood type. But for your body type, whether you're big, small, tall, short, things like
yeah,
that, I think this because it does play a lot with your internal organs, right?
yeah. Oh, sure. I think in general, um, and this is anecdotal, both from my own clients and also, there's a couple places where I'm reading a lot of testimonials,
Okay.
and it's like, yep, one testimonial, that's anecdotal. A couple thousand testimonials, we're getting closer to real science. And
Exactly.
some people would argue that, but we don't have research on just carnivore diet.
Right.
And we know some cultures. So again, we're getting into anecdotal range.
Hmm.
There's a woman I follow named Mary Ruddick, who I'm going to start studying with next week.
Okay.
She and a few other friends, they just went, like, literally in January. They were in Uganda and Tanzania, and they saw like 10 or 12 different tribes.
Mm.
And a guy named Brian Sanders, what is his YouTube channel is Food Lies, but as he calls it, the Peak Human Podcast. And they
Huh.
just did a series of 4 interviews because they were
Mhm.
both on the trip together. It's Brian's podcast, but Mary Ruddick she's a nutritionist, and uh, she's like, if you could see these people, she said, like, the Maasai was one group, and and the Maasai are all over that area, but she went to one tribe in particular. And she said, of all the people she's seen, they're the healthiest people that she's ever seen.
Really?
They're happy, they're healthy. There's literally like no disease. And the group she was with, they're pastoral. They have goats and cows, and their diet consists of meat, raw milk, and blood from live animals. And
Hmm.
and she was just blown away by these people. They look beautiful. They have well-developed bodies. They're healthy, and as get out. And she said most of the people die in their sleep, in their 70s or 80s or sometimes older,
Really?
and they're healthy as hell their entire lives. Even the elders are like running up hills, as part of their exercise that they do. And she went to all these different tribes, and it was varied on what, some of them who are just hunter gatherers,
Hmm.
they're not allowed to hunt the animals that they used to, because some of the Hadza, they used to be able to hunt elephant,
Hmm.
and elephants have a ton of fat, and now they're like hunting baboons and other things which are pretty low fat. So they're not she has a pretty good hunch that 50, 100 years ago they were way healthier than they are now,
Right.
because they don't have full access. And there's another group called the Batwa, which used to live in the jungle, and they've got pushed out of the jungle, and they can't hunt the animals that they used to, and they can't just jump into society because they don't have college educations and all this other stuff.
Right.
So they're kind of trapped, and yeah, so they're seeing a decline with each generation. But their elder, they claim she was 120 years old, and Mary has video of her dancing.
Really? At
And
120
she
years old?
has 6 generations below her. So imagine 7 generations alive.
Wow.
That's impressive. But
That
since
is,
they since
yeah.
they got pushed out of the jungle 30 years ago, they're seeing a decline in their health because they're not able to eat the foods that they used
Mm.
to.
Now, see, I think
So
that's the sad part because, that's been their home forever. And it's like somebody came in and just took away everything that they knew to keep them healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know. In a lot of ways, I have a lot of problems with that
Yeah.
because, you know, it's like if someone was to come over here to the United States and decide to go through a neighborhood and say, "Hey, you guys don't live here anymore. You have to move," but you can't take nothing with you. Like
Yeah.
I don't understand that, and my heart goes out to those people.
Yeah.
And
Well, look at Native Americans in our
right,
country.
right.
I mean, all those Eastern Indians, down the Carolinas and that
Mhm.
whole area.
And
For a
see, that's where I'm
while,
from.
they were living in relative harmony, but then they knew once they decided to have slaves, they knew they couldn't enslave the Native Americans. So then they shipped them out west, right?
Right. Oh well. When we think about that, they didn't ship them out west. They kind of forced them out west
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm from Virginia originally, and my
Okay.
family was descended from Cherokee. And
Oh,
so, yeah, so
okay.
I've heard stories about my family that were in the Trail of Tears, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
how they use the women to go and talk to neighboring tribes as they move them through the Oregon Trail. And I used to always ask why. And very simply put, the Cherokee knew how to speak the language. They were the first ones with the written language and knew how to speak every neighboring language and for trade.
Yeah.
And I've heard the stories and being forced out and then listen to what they did to the tribe. It's like history keeps repeating itself. And at some point, we as people, we have to start to take a stand, because that's where most of our heritage come from, right? When we talk about diets and the foods that we eat, we can learn a lot from the people who were doing it, that were healthier before we came and moved them out.
Yep. Yep.
And that's just really really crazy. And I didn't mean to go off topic, but I just thought
No,
that
no.
I thought that was
Yeah, I didn't mean to
interesting.
minimize how horrific it was
Oh
by
no,
saying
no, you're
by
fine.
saying shipped. But yeah, you're right. They were forced out, and yeah, it's just
Oh
yeah.
man. That's a topic for some time we can sit down
I
and
know,
talk about
right?
and everything, but I realize the time and I want to respect the time. So I know you're on social media. I know your website is not up just yet, but how can people get a
Well,
copy?
actually, it is live.
It is live? Okay.
Yeah, it's. Will you put it in the show notes, or should I say it?
Go ahead and say it, and we'll also put it in the show notes
Yeah,
as well.
it's michaelmathieu.com. And so it's Michael. And my last name is the French Mathieu, Mathieu.com. Yeah.
And you're
And then
on
on Instagram,
okay.
I decided to have fun with my name. So it's Carnivore Quad.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it.
And then like I said, I don't do a lot on Facebook, but I'm there. I've got a page. It's Michael Mathieu Foundational Health. I've been kind of jumping around trying to figure out what I call myself. So my marketing guy is just like, let's just stick with your name. And it's like, okay, Michael Mathieu.
Very simple. Very,
Yeah.
very simple. Now, if you have any words to say to anybody right there to inspire them, what would be those words? What would you tell them?
Uh, Ask lots of questions, and if you don't get satisfactory answers, move on. And that's kind of big picture. But in terms of your health, if you don't like what your doctor's saying, find another one.
There you go.
And the same with your physical body. If a doctor says, well, it's all in your shoulder pain is all in your head, or here, take these pain meds. You know, even with my body work in particular, I can't guarantee anything. But sometimes there's things that, if you have, say, somebody who focuses mostly on muscles and joints, but, everything fell apart after you had, say a woman has a C-section or, you had your appendix out and you notice that's when you started having low back pain. That stuff can be addressed, and it's not mainstream,
Yeah.
but that comes back to the big picture umbrella statement of if you're not feeling optimal, keep looking for answers, because they're out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot more people out there. Yeah. And so, yeah, I, you know, I want to say, Mike, thank you for being on my show today. Thank you for coming out here and sharing your amazing journey. Thank you for having conversation with me. And I enjoyed it, man. I really do. And I encourage people that are watching this episode right now, reach out to Mike, get your body work done, and just enjoy the amazing work that this man does. And, enjoy him, because he'll have you smiling, he'll have you laughing and everything else. But I think, what the work that he's done, he's going to do some amazing things in this world. And I encourage everyone to support those of us out here doing this work, and reach out to Mike, reach out to his partner, Beth, and just be amazed at who they are. Enjoy the work that they do. And with that being said, I want to thank everyone. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. And I want to say, Mike, thank you for being on. It's humbling to have you on and sharing your story and your journey. And if there's anything that I can do to support you in what you're doing, please let us know.
Well, I want to thank you, Tony, for expressing interest
Yeah.
and giving me some airtime. And I want to say I really, this is important to me because I'm real sensitive to how I'm received by people. And I feel really heard by you.
Thank you. Thank you. I heard you. I heard everything. I heard what's going on inside of you. I heard your passion. I heard your heart, man. And that's one of the things about what you do. Like, you're a compass to people's pain, and you're a healer and in helping them achieve that. I hear people. I hear your story. I hear your journey. I hear who you are. And I think that's what makes me good at what I do as well, doing grief support for men, is that I can sit in a room and I can actually hear where they're coming from, not just the trauma, but I hear what the underlying what they're really covering up. And I think that's important in the work that we do, is to hear the underlying questions that aren't being asked for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Or to hear the story that's not being told, and going there and putting those pieces together to complete that story. And I think that's what makes up the whole human body, is that once you start putting these different chapters together, so to speak, a person comes out a brand new book, so to speak, with a better ending, with a happier ending. And I think that's what we all strive to do in this world, to give back, to serve, and to be better human beings in this world, and to help others achieve their level of healing that they're asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I put out a promotion to your listeners?
Well, yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody is curious about my body work, I would offer I don't like just giving away things sometimes. So how about like $10 for a session? That way it's like a really minimal financial offering. And and just so that, I really get that, I'm an engineer by training initially. So it's like, how do you work on somebody long distance? That just doesn't make any sense that you can do anything. And but in general, I'm getting similar results to when I was able-bodied. Okay. So if someone's curious, but they're kind of on the fence, I'd be happy to, offer a session for $10. And then if they decide, this isn't a good fit for me, then, you're only out $10.
There you go. And I think I'm gonna have to take you up on that offer because I
Yeah,
know there's work that needs to be done with me, and
Yeah.
I'd be curious to know how far I've come or how far I need to go.
There you go.
Because healing for me is multi-level. There's parts of
Yeah.
me that I understand that I still have to go in and tweak and get it moving in the right direction, but I'm working on it nonetheless. And with
Yeah.
people like yourself, I mean, that just makes it that much more easier to spend the $10 and come down and get the body work done, or we can set up on Zoom. And for people out there listening right now, yes, you can set up on Zoom or get in contact with him, and he's good. Let him work his miracle on you. Definitely let him work his miracle on you. And for $10, guys, you cannot beat that. You cannot beat that. And because I think the chiropractor costs you what, 20 to go in there and get them move around your hips and things like that, if not more, depending on where you go, right?
Probably quite a bit more.
Yeah. So for $10,
depends on who and how much time they spend with you.
Exactly. So take that $10 instead of the next time you're thinking about going to a chiropractor, get in contact with Michael. And go down there. And as he said, it may not be a good fit, but it doesn't really matter. You're out of $10, right? You know what I'm saying? $10 is not going to make or break you. And so yeah, I would
And I just want to be clear, nothing bad about chiropractors in my book.
No,
it's just sometimes we have to find the right approach for us.
Right.
That's why there's all these different types of body work you can choose from, because sometimes you got to find the one that's right for you.
There you go. And with that being said, people, thank you for tuning in. And till next time, you guys get to work.
Thanks again for all the support for Memories of Us podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe. New episodes every Tuesday. You can listen on all of your popular podcast platforms like Apple or iHeartRadio. Until next time, stay strong.